Good afternoon. The first item of business this afternoon is portfolio questions, and the portfolio on this occasion is social justice. A reminder to members wishing to ask a supplementary question to press the request to speak buttons during the relevant question. I call question number 1, Willie Rennie.
To ask the Scottish Government what its position is on the implementation of the Temporary Accommodation Standards Framework in light of reports that children are living in properties affected by mould, vermin and overcrowding.
Minister Paul McLennan.
A new temporary accommodation standards framework, which built on the 2019 advisory standards, was published and shared by the Scottish Government in 2023. Local authorities and social landlords are expected to work towards meeting the framework before it becomes legally enforceable. We need to formally consult on the standards before they can be legally enforced. In the meantime, social housing providers have time to make improvements to their temporary accommodation supply, provide the necessary training for staff and ensure new procedures are in place to meet the framework.
Willie Rennie.
There's clearly an issue because the shelter report was so stark. So has the Minister got an understanding about what the baseline is? How many properties and how many local authorities are already meeting this standard? Because if we don't understand the baseline, how will we know whether progress has been made or not?
Minister.
To come back to the member on that specific point and contact him on that specific point. Obviously, we meet with local authorities on a regular basis regarding the temporary accommodation framework. We've also taken action, as he knows, in terms of that and trying to improve the temporary accommodation in terms of the acquisition and funding that we've put towards that. And we're seeing reductions, for example, in voids in most of the areas that are under the most pressure at this moment. But happy to come back to him on that specific point.
Question 2, Mark Ruskell.
Thank you. To ask the Scottish Government if it can provide an update on the work to end conversion practices in light of the resignation of the UK Minister for International Development and for Women and Equalities and the inevitable delays this will bring to joint work required in the chosen four-nation approach.
Mr Ruskell, that's not the question that was on the sheet.
Oh, okay.
Mr Ray. Mr Ruskell.
Apologies, Presiding Officer, it was a previous edit. So to ask the Scottish Government whether it can provide an update on its work to end conversion practices, including whether it anticipates any delay to its joint work with the UK Government on this as a result of recent ministerial changes.
Thank you. Cabinet Secretary Shirley-Ann Somerville.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Conversion practices that seek to change or suppress a person's sexual orientation or gender identity are harmful and they are abusive. Both the Scottish and UK governments have committed to ending harmful conversion practices, and it is right that we explore complementary approaches. This could bring consistency and demonstrates cross-government and cross-party leadership, and I hope sends a clear statement that conversion practices are unacceptable right across the UK. Engagement is ongoing, both with ministers and at official level, while we consider these options, but we continue to prepare legislation for introduction to the Scottish Parliament should that be necessary.
Mark Ruskell.
Well, I appreciate the sentiment of that response from the Cabinet Secretary, but the LGBTQ+ community in Scotland feel really let down and frustrated. No new human rights bill, minimal progress on the non-binary action plan, gender recognition reform blocked at Westminster, slow progress on the misogyny bill, and now it looks like the law to end conversion practices has stalled in this Parliament. And this inaction sits against a backdrop of rising prejudice, particularly against trans people, both in our society and in this building. And for me, the recent debates have marked an absolute low point in the 25-year history of this Parliament. So can I urge the Cabinet Secretary to listen to this community, to give them the support they need to live their lives with dignity and respect? And will she ensure that progress is made to end conversion practices by March 2026?
Cabinet Secretary.
Can I thank Mark Ruskell for tabling this question today, because it does give me the opportunity to once again reaffirm the Scottish Government's firm commitment to ending conversion practices in Scotland. I think it would be perhaps helpful as well if my colleague CoCab Stewart could write to him, for example, on the work that is being undertaken on a non-binary action plan and so on, to update him on those issues, but particularly in relation to the proposed bill. That work is absolutely continuing. It is complex. We do need to make sure that we take account the rights of religious practice and right to the family life as we balance that delicate approach. I hope, can be reassured by my personal commitment, by the Government's full commitment on ending conversion practices in Scotland.
Question 3 from Graham Simpson, who joins us remotely.
Thank you. To ask the Scottish Government what its response is to data from the most recent Scottish Landlord Register, which shows that the number of landlords has decreased by 2,650 in 3 years.
Minister Paul McLennan.
The published statistics show in the last 3 years the number of registered landlords has decreased by 1.1%. That is 2,655 fewer registered landlords. However, the statistics also show that the number of registered properties during this period has increased by 3.3%. That is 11,047 more registered properties available to rent. While this may point to some landlords choosing to leave the sector, the evidence suggests that the properties are remaining in the sector or new properties are being offered for rent. It should be noted that some limitations to administrative data for the Landlord Register, including the time lag in landlords deregistering properties that are no longer available to rent. These statistics should therefore be treated with some caution.
Graham Simpson.
Well, thank the Minister for that answer. I don't know whether he's aware of a survey done by the Scottish Association of Landlords in which over 50% of people responding said they plan to cut the size of their portfolios in 5 years, and just 10% are planning any investment in the sector. Now, part of the reason for that, of course, is rent controls. Now, we have the housing bill coming up. The Minister knows that I've tabled sensible amendments around exemptions to rent controls. So is he prepared to commit to having sensible exemptions either in the bill or in regulations?
Minister.
I thank the member for his question. Scotland needs a thriving private rented sector, and that's one that offers good quality affordable housing options and values the best. Values the benefit that investment in registered rented property delivers. I think we've had discussions, as he knows, around about the consultation that's coming up around about exemptions, and we've had discussions around about that. I'm happy to continue to have discussions around about him with that. I've also met with the Scottish Association of Landlords on that particular point, and we'll take forward the discussions with him as we develop the bill.
Question number 4, Faisal Chowdhury.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what progress it has made in tackling the housing emergency.
Minister Paul McLennan.
We are delivering a range of action in response to the housing emergency. To support rapid action, we have targeted an additional £40 million to those local authorities facing the most sustained homelessness pressures. We have also announced an additional £1 million from this year's budget to go directly towards sustaining tenancies. In 25-26, we will deliver the increased affordable housing supply programme budget of £768 million, along with £4 million homelessness prevention funding and additional funding to bring more privately owned empty homes back into use.
Faisal Chowdhury.
I thank the Minister for the answer. Recent statistics shows the scale of Scotland housing emergency under the SNP, 250,000 people waiting for social housing, more children trapped in temporary accommodation in Edinburgh than all of Wales, and housing starts slowing down. With these figures in mind, can the Minister advise what specific outcomes or benchmarks the Scottish Government has for ending the housing emergency? Minister.
I think I'd highlight some of the actions that we've been taking since the housing emergency was declared, and there's some examples. 12 local authorities are reducing homelessness. 20 local authorities are reducing homelessness with children. In terms of that, there's also been a 55% reduction in voids in his own local authority in Edinburgh, and we've seen a 23% reduction in South Lanarkshire, 25% reduction in voids in West Lothian, 20% reduction in Fife. So, and as I mentioned about the £768 million budget also. But this is about a partnership approach as well. And one of the key things that we found, obviously, moving forward with this is local housing allowance. That was referred to in a paper, a publication by Crisis. So I would be looking for his support about increasing local housing allowance as tackling part of the housing emergency.
Question number 5, Colin Smith.
Thank you, President Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what its response is to calls from Independent Age for a pensioner poverty strategy for Scotland.
Cabinet Secretary.
The Scottish Government's A Fairer Scotland for Older People framework for action contains a dedicated strand focused on activity we are undertaking to ensure people are financially secure and supported as they age. Independent Age are a valued member of the Older People Strategic Action Forum. We engage regularly with the group on actions we take to support the needs of older people in Scotland. In addition, we provide funding of £2.2 million through the Equality and Human Rights Fund to older people's organisations and age equality projects. This funding is delivering a range of initiatives that tackles poverty among older people.
Colin Smith.
President Officer, despite the framework that the Cabinet Secretary referred to, 1 in 6 pensioners in Scotland are living in poverty, and that number is actually on an increase. So it's little wonder that polling by Independent Age shows that over 90% of older people back calls for a long-term strategy from the Scottish Government to reduce that poverty. So will the Cabinet Secretary give a clear commitment that when it sets out the refreshed A Fairer Scotland Older People framework, it contains new comprehensive measures across all government departments that will increase older people's incomes, cut their costs, and will have a clear commitment to actually reducing that level of pensioner poverty?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, Colin Smith raises a very important point about this being the work right across government, not just in social justice. Can I gently say to him as well as also across all governments? So what doesn't help pensioner poverty, presiding officer, is the UK government refusing to compensate WASPy women, or indeed the UK government taking away winter fuel payments. Nonetheless, despite those strong headwinds from the UK Government, we are very, very keen to do what we can within our mainly fixed budget to see what we can do to support older people. We absolutely appreciate that there is a cost of living crisis for many older people. That's exactly why the Government is committed to the free bus travel for everyone over aged 60, why we have investment into income maximisation support, why we're helping with energy efficiency and heating, and why we're looking at crisis interventions. Now, we'll continue that work. It's exceptionally important that we do. And another part of that work is the work around the social tariff, which will help many, many older people. And I hope that the UK Government takes up the recommendations that will come from that working group in due course.
Supplementary, Kenneth Gibson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. It's astonishing that Labour is a brass neck to talk about rising pensioner poverty after taking away up to £300 a year in winter fuel payments, failing to deliver £300 cuts to household energy bills and presiding over another near £300 rise in those bills, and the betrayal of WASPy women seeking pension justice. Does the Cabinet Secretary agree that Labour must reverse its cuts to winter fuel payments and honour its manifesto commitments to pensioners if they are serious about tackling pensioner poverty?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, Mr Gibson raises a very important point, and even on the aspects such as winter fuel payment, where the Scottish Government has stepped in, and we will reinstate a universal winter fuel payment for pensioner households, it would still be advantageous if the UK Government did so in the rest of the UK, because it would allow those block grant adjustments. We are mitigating many UK measures, and this is a new one. He's also, of course, quite right to point out to the, yet again, further increase that's happening in fuel payments. So he does point quite correctly to the fact that it takes all governments to work to help alleviate pension poverty, and the Scottish Government will do what it can. It will mitigate where it can, but we do need the UK Government to do similar.
Question 6, Willie Coffey.
Thank you. To ask the Scottish Government how the Housing to 2040 strategy will aim to benefit Kilmarnock and Irvine Valley.
Minister Paul McLennan.
Housing to 2040 is our long-term strategy to ensure everyone in Scotland has a safe, good quality and affordable home by 2040. We are also deploying a number of priority actions to respond to the housing emergency. Since April 2016, we have supported the delivery of 920 affordable homes in East Ayrshire, the majority of which were for social rent. In 24-25, we've also made available £9.852 million to support the delivery of affordable housing across East Ayrshire. The Scottish Government is reviewing East Ayrshire's recent strategic housing investment plan, which outlines their priorities for new housing investment.
Willie Coffey.
I thank the Minister for that answer. He will be well aware of the good performance in East Ayrshire during this parliamentary term, which has seen 353 affordable homes being built, 169 of them by the Council, with 48 of those being opened just this week in Kilmarnock by the SNP administration. Many of those houses, Presiding Officer, are already net zero compliant, and many are adapted and accessible to fully meet the needs of local people. Can the Minister join me in congratulating East Ayrshire for the impressive record that they have, and would he be confident that the investment to be delivered by the Scottish Government through the recent budget will further enhance the housing programme there for local people in the period that lies ahead?
Minister.
I thank the member for his question. I'm delighted to obviously be aware of the project in Kilmarnock that he's mentioned there, and obviously that's just been recently completed for social rent. And obviously that meets a range of housing needs which the Council has to deliver much needed homes in the constituency. He mentioned about the increased budget as part of our investment of £768 million, and local staff will be working very closely with the local authority in that regard, and I'm confident we'll see a number of houses coming forward in the near future.
And supplementary, Brian Whittle.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. With Scotland's 2032 affordable housing target at very real risk of being missed, it's clear we need to do more to consistently increase the number of new homes being built. In East Ayrshire, the number of new builds started last year was fewer than half as many as were started in the year ending September 2023. Does the Minister accept that we need to facilitate more homes being built, and does he recognise the importance of working with schools, colleges and universities to ensure the construction sector has the workforce it needs in that process?
Minister.
I think Mr Whittle makes a very good point, and obviously I think the skills interaction is very important on that. I think there was an impact, no doubt there was an impact through Brexit when that occurred, because we lost a number of staff, a number of construction staff across Scotland. I think it's a really important point. I know there's already work goes on with schools, colleges in the area in that particular sector, and I'm delighted, we'll be working with skills agencies in terms of that to make sure we grow the construction skills agenda and the growth in the sector itself.
Thank you. Question 7, Paul Sweeney.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what discussions the Housing Secretary has had with Ministerial College regarding what work can be done to repurpose empty commercial and other properties for affordable housing in Glasgow.
Minister Paul McLennan.
In 25-26, we will invest £2 million into bringing more privately homed empty homes back into use. And Glasgow has a very good record in that particular area. The Affordable Housing Supply Programme also supports the conversion of non-residential property, where these projects are considered a strategic priority. Glasgow City Council have supported a number of conversions of non-residential properties in their Affordable Housing Supply Programme in the city. To date, there have mostly been shop conversions. Only last week I recently met with the Minister for Employment and Investment to discuss how we can collectively look at conversion of empty commercial properties as part of our regeneration efforts.
Paul Sweeney.
Progress has certainly been good, but it could be so much more, and there have been some recent changes which may militate against effective reuse of listed buildings, such as the changes to empty property relief which were devolved to Glasgow City Council a couple of years ago and is now being charged without any exemption on vacant listed buildings. The way in which that's been handled in a blanket way is actually gumming up the market and preventing restoring purchasers for taking on listed buildings. I would also highlight the opportunity identified by Lar Housing Trust with their In on the Green project, a be-listed property in Bridgeton, which they say they could have ready in time for the Commonwealth Games next summer to house 150 athletes before first let. I've just been told that they've been knocked back by the Scottish Government for further funding. Perhaps the Minister could look at that particular opportunity to be a demonstrator as part of the Commonwealth Games of sustainable reuse of Glasgow's buildings.
Minister.
I'm aware, obviously, the importance that Glasgow put to the commercial properties coming back into use, and we have regular discussions in that particular regard. And in regard to the point you mentioned about Lar Housing, happy to look at that and come back to the member on that particular point.
And supplementary, Claire Haughey.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Will the Minister advise Chamber of the continued importance of the Scottish Empty Homes Partnership in ensuring unoccupied and void properties are brought back into use in the Greater Glasgow area and across Scotland?
Minister.
The success of the Scottish Empty Homes Partnership, working closely with private homeowners, local authorities and third sector partners, was recognised by a 2023 independent audit for delivering value for money and has cross-party support within this chamber. More than 11,000 empty homes have been returned to use since 2010, including many across the Greater Glasgow area. In 25-26, we are investing a further £2 million to the partnership to support local authorities to accelerate the pace of this work. By working together with private owners and communities, homes are being reoccupied in the places they are needed most.
Question 8, Sandis Gulhani.
Thank you. To ask the Scottish Government whether it will provide an update on the progress with cladding remediation programme.
Minister Paul McLennan.
I outlined in the statement on 6 January in response to written PQ S6W 32849 the Government's strategic priorities for action on cladding this year. These priorities included continuing with our current programme of work, increasing the pace and breadth of action on cladding and developing a national endeavour to collectively address the risks of cladding. We've committed to publishing a plan of action for cladding remediation to set out how we and when we will deliver on these priorities. And I will be making a further statement in Parliament on the 25th of March to introduce the plan.
Anders Goulhani.
9 months ago, I met the Minister's officials on behalf of my constituents who have faced numerous challenges and delays in cladding remuneration process, and progress has been painfully slow. The building owners are in debt, insurance costs are sky high, and they cannot sell their properties, yet live in a Grenfell Tower equivalent building. They are not alone. None of these buildings in Scotland have had works completed and signed off, and that's not including the thousands of people who have not been identified on the pilot. Almost 8 years on from the Grenfell tragedy, with almost £100 million to spend, what reassurance can the Minister, who is solely responsible, give us that he is demanding progress is made as quickly as possible? And will the Minister set out a firm timetable in the statement that he alluded to?
Minister.
Can I thank the member for his question? I think we have taken action in that period of time. Obviously, the cladding bill was brought forward, which gave us powers, for example, to enforce action against developers. It also gave us the ability to act when there was not an agreement between all residents in that particular point. And obviously, one of the key points of that was the single building assessment, to make sure we had a process agreed. We had an extensive engagement with developers on that particular point. As I've mentioned, I'll be delivering a statement on the 25th of March to introduce a plan and refer to the points I was making about increasing the breadth and pace of action on that particular point, and I'm happy to engage Mr Goulhani in terms of that once that's published and I've made the statement.
Okay, supplementary, Willie Rennie.
I've received from a resident in Edinburgh this letter. It says that this is from the Scottish Government, that due to issues encountered during the procurement process, the completion and drafting of the refreshed single building assessment has encountered a delay, as the supplier selected has not been able to deliver as set out in our initial programme. Unfortunately, this means we require further advice to address the issues encountered and to progress with the SBA process. Can the Minister set out how many properties are affected by this delay and when the issues are going to be resolved?
Minister.
Engage with Mr Rennie on that particular point, and obviously you didn't mention about the building and the particular resident that's there, but I'm happy to engage yourself, Mr Rennie, on that particular point and engage with the resident as well.
Thank you, Minister. That concludes portfolio questions. There will be a brief pause before we move to the next item to allow front benches to change.